On July 7, 2016, downtown Dallas became the scene of the deadliest attack on American law enforcement since 9/11, but this wasn't terrorism from abroad, it was driven by rage born right here at home. In a matter of hours, a peaceful protest transformed into unimaginable chaos, forever changing the lives of those involved and raising troubling questions that still haunt America today. On the evening of July 7, 2016, hundreds gathered on Main Street in Dallas, Texas, joining nationwide demonstrations protesting police brutality against African Americans. Tensions had peaked following two tragic events just days earlier in Minnesota and Louisiana, where fatal confrontations with law enforcement had taken the lives of two black men. Responding to sharp criticism over the militarization of police, Dallas officials explicitly ordered their officers to avoid heavy, military-grade equipment like armored vests and assault rifles, instructing them instead to patrol the demonstration wearing standard Kevlar gear and carrying only light firearms. It was a decision meant to ease public anxiety, but no one could have anticipated the horrifying violence about to erupt. At approximately 8:58 p.m., as the protest neared its peaceful conclusion, a black SUV quietly parked near the intersection of Lamar and Main Street. Micah Xavier Johnson, an Afghanistan war veteran dressed in tactical military gear and body armor, stepped out armed with a high-powered SKS rifle. Silently moving closer, he concealed himself behind a pillar at El Centro College, mere yards away from unsuspecting police officers overseeing crowd control. Without warning, Johnson unleashed a sudden, devastating volley of gunfire, instantly sending chaos through the streets. Officers Lauren Aarons, Michael Kroll, and Patrick Zamaripa were fatally struck in the initial moments, while panicked demonstrators scattered, desperately seeking cover as the horrific realization set in: Dallas was under attack. Within seconds, downtown Dallas descended into chaos. Protesters scattered in every direction, their panicked screams mixing with the echoes of gunfire bouncing off the buildings, causing disorientation for officers desperately trying to locate the shooter. Police initially struggled to determine whether they were facing a lone gunman or multiple assailants hidden in the crowd. Amid the confusion, Johnson was wounded by return fire but continued his deadly path, retreating toward El Centro College. He smashed through the glass entrance, planning to take shelter inside, but encountered resistance from campus police officers Brian Shaw and John Abbott. In the violent exchange, Shaw was seriously injured by gunfire, while Abbott was wounded by flying glass fragments. With his entry blocked, Johnson quickly recalculated his route, slipping away northbound along Lamar Street, still heavily armed, and still determined to inflict further harm. Moving swiftly and methodically, Johnson encountered Officer Brent Thompson of the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police along Lamar Street. Drawing on his military combat training, Johnson strategically maneuvered behind Thompson and fired multiple rounds, tragically ending the officer's life. Undeterred, Johnson continued his deadly advance, navigating his way deeper into the El Centro College complex. Once inside, he positioned himself near windows overlooking Elm Street and resumed his assault, fatally striking Sergeant Michael Smith, who had been securing the area below. Cornered but far from finished, Johnson then retreated further into the building's maze-like hallways, choosing a secluded position unreachable by snipers. For police, the worst was far from over. The shooter was trapped, heavily armed, and ready to fight until his last breath. Special tactical units quickly located Johnson's hiding spot, guided by a chilling trail of his own blood. But the narrow corridor separating officers from the shooter created a dangerous stalemate. Johnson held a fortified position about 30 feet away, too risky for direct confrontation. Thus began a nerve-wracking negotiation, stretching on for hours into the early morning. During these tense exchanges, Johnson revealed a disturbing motivation: racial hatred. He openly stated his intent to take the lives of as many white officers as possible, claiming responsibility for planting explosives throughout downtown Dallas. Police negotiators described Johnson's behavior as erratic and bizarre. He alternated between singing, laughing hysterically, and occasionally firing random shots to keep officers at bay. As each minute passed, officers knew the next move would have to be decisive, or even more lives could be lost. By 2:30 a.m., police leadership faced an agonizing choice. Traditional options, storming the corridor or attempting another approach, were almost certain to result in further police casualties. In an unprecedented and controversial decision, Dallas Police Chief David Brown authorized the use of lethal force via a remotely controlled bomb disposal robot. Equipped with roughly 1 pound of C4 explosive, the robot carefully approached Johnson's fortified position and detonated, instantly ending the standoff. This marked the first time in American history that police had intentionally deployed a robot to eliminate an active threat. The groundbreaking tactic sparked immediate public debate, with some praising the ingenuity that undoubtedly saved officers' lives, while others questioned the ethics of robotic force. Yet despite criticism, investigators ultimately supported the department's drastic measures, concluding that any alternative would have dramatically increased the night's tragic toll. In the days that followed, America grappled with the shock of this unprecedented attack on law enforcement. The city of Dallas mourned the loss of 5 officers, 4 from the Dallas Police Department, Lorne Aarons, Michael Kroll, Patrick Zamaripa, and Michael Smith, and 1 DART officer, Brent Thompson. 9 additional officers and 2 civilians were left wounded, physically and emotionally scarred by the events of that terrifying night. Yet beyond grief, the public reaction was sharply divided. While many applauded the decisive actions taken by police to end the threat, others debated fiercely about the morality and implications of deploying lethal robotic force. Authorities maintained that traditional approaches would have only increased casualties, ultimately clearing police leadership of wrongdoing. However, the haunting questions raised by the incident lingered, challenging the nation to reconsider how law enforcement could and should respond when confronted with extraordinary violence. In the wake of the tragedy, investigators dove deep into Micah Xavier Johnson's troubled past, uncovering disturbing details that painted a chilling portrait of the attacker. Johnson was a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, honorably discharged under mysterious circumstances following accusations of sexual harassment, charges that curiously never affected his official record. Former acquaintances described Johnson as withdrawn and increasingly volatile upon returning home, noting clear signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, though he never received an official diagnosis. Authorities also discovered alarming evidence linking Johnson to radical beliefs, including his support for extremist groups like the Black Power movement. His home contained bomb-making materials and cryptic tactical notes that hinted at a far more ambitious, devastating plan. These revelations underscored critical missed warnings, leaving many to question whether earlier intervention might have prevented this tragedy. The Dallas attack remains a stark reminder of the tensions that simmer beneath the surface in America, a violent flashpoint highlighting deep racial divides, complex mental health issues, and troubling questions around police militarization. The tragic events of July 7, 2016, forever changed the lives of victims, their families, and a city that still carries the scars. Even now, years later, crucial debates sparked by this incident continue. How should law enforcement balance public safety with ethical restraint? And could greater attention to mental health and radicalization have prevented such devastation? As we reflect on the darkest night in recent Dallas history, these questions remain urgent, challenging us all to seek solutions beyond the tragedy itself.